thank you very much. I'll be using the.
Okay, so this next session will be about bioenergy technologies. It will be an overview presentation of pretty much everything that bioenergy has to offer. So people who tend to know bioenergy, especially from wood combustion, biofuels like charcoal, not always aware of other bioenergy applications, bioenergy technologies like biogas production, like gasification, the combustion of biomass for electricity generation, some of the different aspects of liquid biofuels. So that will be the purpose of this presentation. Before we start, when I was looking at the forms that you all sent in, I saw that there were quite a few people who actually did have some experience with bioenergy. So I just wanted to check if there are some of you who might want to tell us just in a few sentences what is your experience in bioenergy. It can be in Portuguese if Carlos could translate for me. Can I see some hands in room 1 or room 2? Anyone like to share something?
But to whom are you talking?
To everyone, actually. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, now I can hear, but can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, sorry. I was hoping to hear from some of the participants what is their experience with bioenergy, and it can be anything. It can be cooking stoves, it can be biogas, it can be large-scale combustion, it can be industrial, it can be gasification, it can be bioethanol or plant oil or anything really. I would like to see if there's any participants who can tell us something about it. Anyone? Even Carlos, I know that you have plenty of experience.
Sala 205, alguém quer responder essa questão? No reaction so far.
No reaction. So no one has ever lit a little cooking fire? No one has ever used bioethanol for cooking? Hello, can you hear me?
It seems that participants from room 205, they're trying to talk, but the micros are not on yet.
Ah, okay.
Or they can hear us, but when they want to react, something is not working perfectly. So someone went up quickly to check what is going on.
Okay, great.
So we can proceed slowly and see if they can interact with us.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go in. Yeah, this is a small overview of the different subjects that I'd like to discuss with you. Starting from biomass feedstocks, there's plenty of materials that can be used for bioenergy production. Then looking at a number of technology application combinations from combustion, gasification, pyrolysis to anaerobic digestion, which is biogas production and liquid biofuels. And then briefly look at some socioeconomic and environmental aspects of bioenergy. And of course, I'm standing by to hear from room 2 if the connection problems have been resolved.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Sala Duzen. Dottor Avelino. Dottor Avelino.
Alô?
Dottor Avelino.
Alô?
Sim, doutor. Pedia que repetissem a questão. Os participantes da sala 205 não perceberam a questão que se colocava.
Ah, ok. Então agora já temos comunicação convosco. Ok.
Havia dificuldade.
Mr. Bart?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, did you hear someone talking from 205?
Yes, I did.
And what they are asking now is that you should repeat your questions.
Okay. Yes.
Please.
Okay, thank you. What I asked before was whether there are any participants in the audience in room 1 or in room 2 who have any experience with bioenergy in their, let's say, in the professional life. I know there are some of the participants who enlisted, who indicated in the forms that we collected from all the participants that there's there's a few people who have worked with bioenergy, and I was very curious to learn what is the actual experience that these participants have. So I would like to invite any one of you to, maybe say in a few words, what is your experience in this field?
I do have a bit of experience on it. In fact, I participate in the installation of 2 different systems. One using the pig's excrements to make gas for a kitchen. Another one for a school. It's a little bit bigger, about 5 cubic meters. Also to use it for the cooking in order to heat water. Yeah, basically is this.
Okay. And did you help with the construction or with the planning, or what was your role in the project?
In the construction.
Construction. Nice. Actually, I did some biogas constructions in the north of Mozambique 6 or 7 years ago, I think. I was also at the school.
No, it is here in the south. In fact, about 6 years ago.
Okay. Good, thank you. So that's biogas. Anyone else?
Room 205. An example from room 205. Alguém na sala 205 tem alguma coisa a dizer, algum exemplo a dar na área do uso de bioenergia ou biomassa? Produção de biogás ou produção de uma forma de calor? Só um minuto. Iria pedir para o Edelson reagir se há alguém que quer falar ou não, para termos a certeza que estamos a comunicarmos-nos. Edelson ou qualquer um que está aí no 205, na sala 205.
Sim, engenheiro. Penso que aqui em cima, neste momento, ninguém está pronto para...
Ok, tá bom. Temos
Ok.
mais um exemplo aqui da sala 105. So,
Okay.
no question from 205, but there is another intervention from 105. Mr.
Yes.
Frat, please.
So I would like to add something. I mentioned the first one is the pig excrements. The second one, it's for cow, is excrements. But for the both of them, especially in the school, the people is a bit constrained about the usage of excrements at the kitchen. Yeah, basically this is one important thing to share. The people generally they don't see it with the good eyes.
You mean excrement from human or from animal?
Animals.
Animals.
But
Okay.
I think for the people it'd be worst.
Yeah. I partially agree to that. It really needs some very special care if you look at the use of human waste, human excrements. But you know, there's always quite a difference between, let's say, household systems for biogas, which usually function very well, I should add. But it's, you know, it's a bit more laborious, and indeed it involves really managing the feedstock, usually by hand, mixing with water, and then using the effluents as a fertilizer. So yes, that is an issue indeed. Um, are we still connected? Hello, are we still connected?
Yes, from this side, yes.
Yes, you are back. Welcome back.
Okay. So thank you for those insights. During the training this week, we'll also have a visitor from one of the sugar companies in Mozambique, who will be telling us a bit about the experience of using bagasse left over from cane sugar extraction, and using that for the production of electricity and heat, which you might find interesting. So for now, maybe it's good that we proceed with the overview presentation. Please don't hesitate to ask in case of questions. We can also wait until the end and use the last minutes of the presentation for question and answers. So as I was trying to explain, bioenergy is basically energy derived from organic materials, and there's a wide range of different types of materials that can be used, like wood, plant materials, different types of waste from humans and animals. You can have organic components in wastewater, but you know what they all have in common is that they originate from organic material from plants which were recently grown. Of course, fossil fuels, fossil energy sources like coal and oil and natural gas, they also originate from plants, but that was accumulated millions of years ago, and that's what distinguishes these fossilized fuels from biomass and bioenergy. Now, what plants do is they convert carbon dioxide and water to biomass, to organic material, and they use energy from the sun in this process. And this process is called carbon assimilation. So in fact, you can say that bioenergy is also solar energy, but it uses plant material as an intermediate step. And I should also say that if you look at a area basis per hectare, actually PV solar, for example, is quite substantially more efficient than bioenergy. But let's put that aside for the moment. So once we have biomass in whichever form, we can convert it to useful energy. That's basically electricity or heat or mechanical power. And we need to have some conversion steps. So we either need to burn the biomass directly, convert it to steam, and then have the steam drive a turbine or a steam engine, and then we have our electricity or mechanical power. We can also convert the biomass to gas and use that gas in, well, a gas engine, for example, or again, use this gas for steam production and then use the steam in a turbine or a steam engine. I see that the connection keeps falling away. Can you still follow?
Yeah, we could not follow.
Okay. I was just explaining different steps from sunlight to biomass to energy using different conversion steps. I think I'll just proceed to the next slide. Otherwise, we'll be otherwise this will take a lot of time. Some key features of bioenergy is that it's quite stable and usually around the clock available energy supply. I think we lost each other again. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
We are back again.
Okay. There's this not so much seasonal fluctuation, although that also depends on the availability of biomass. If there's seasonal fluctuation in the availability, then there is a seasonal fluctuation, but not with PV that you may have rainy periods in which you have little resources, or in the case of hydro, that you have a dry period with little resources. Basically, you can, if you want to, you can store your feedstocks depending on the type, and then use it throughout the year. There are very large resources of bioenergy, of biomass. Firstly, in waste and byproducts from agriculture and agro processing. And even if those would be used up, there's the possibility of growing biomass on set aside land. Bioenergy is a very efficient type of energy that can be used for the production of heat, and as such, it's more suitable for that than other renewable energy sources, except for geothermal, perhaps. So it's therefore widely used for production of industrial heat or district heating in more colder climates. And it has some specific socio-economic advantages, specifically that feedstock supply, producing wood or collecting waste for energy production can create employment and therefore create income for people, especially in rural areas. Some drawbacks of bioenergy is costs. Bioenergy plants, especially modern bioenergy plants, have quite considerable investments. other than, for example, hydro and solar energy, the production costs, so during the lifetime of the project, are relatively high, because the feedstock needs to be made available. There's quite some operation, some maintenance costs. In some cases, it can take quite some space, especially when biomass has to be grown specifically for the production of the energy on energy plantations. And if you look at biomass and you compare it to fossil fuels, it has a very low bulk density. I mean, it can be a factor 5 to 10 on a volume basis. That means that if you do want to store it, you need to have like 5 to 10 times more space than what you would have if in case of fossil fuels. There's an overview of different conversion routes. I can highlight a few possibilities. Let's get the pointer on. Starting from feedstocks, bioenergy resources in the top. It could be dedicated energy crops or wastes or byproducts, which are harvested or collected and then converted either through high temperature thermochemical conversion, or through physical chemical conversion steps, or biochemical conversion steps. Most of them go to intermediate products, so solids, gaseous, or liquid biofuels, which can then be used combustion in boilers, for example, or in internal combustion engines for the production of power or heat. This is just one of the schematics that you can find on bioenergy. There's others as well. So this is a very useful one. If you look at the importance of bioenergy, we see in on the overall. I think we highlighted this also in the morning session. Bioenergy has a very modest share in the total energy supply. Looking at the global situation. On the other hand, if you look at renewables in total, then bioenergy takes a very large portion. Looking at the whole of Africa, we see that bioenergy has a relatively large share. It's roughly 50%, and the others being maybe oil, gas, coal, let's say mainly fossil, non-renewable energy sources. Looking at Mozambique, we see that bioenergy, particularly cooking fuels, fuel wood, accounts for roughly 2/3 of the energy supply. And we see here, of course, that the production from especially hydro has a relatively large share if you compare to let's say Africa as a whole. We've seen this sheet as well, indicating that the share of solid biofuels, solid biomass, is the light blue one, and the dark blue ones is very high compared to others like biogas, which is this little dark green one, and this tiny green one over there, in comparison also to transport fuels and to others, which is very sad, I think, mainly charcoal. And within the solid biofuels, biomass, this is the share of fuel wood, let's say, for traditional usage of biomass. But it's actually a very important share of bioenergy. Now this is a sheet showing a different biomass feedstock. Let's say the origin and their nature, and some examples of the types. This is also one example of how it can be divided in different categories. But I found it a very useful one. We have biomass from forests, which is mainly what we call lignocellulosic biomass. So it means wood is probably the most important one at the moment, but also crop residues from agriculture classify as lignocellulosic, and some waste from industry can be, let's say, solid biomass lignocellulosic. And then the examples are wood, stalks, shells, husks, dry biomass. It can contain moisture, as was indicated in the first part of our afternoon session. But as a whole, the biomass is considered dry. From agriculture, you can also have oily, sugary, and starch-containing biomass, which can be used for the production of liquid biofuels, ethanol, and plant oils, vegetable oils. Examples are sugarcane, cassava, palm oil, and used oil, used cooking oil, waste oils. Another type are livestock wastes, mainly from households and agriculture. So it can be waste directly from animals. So there's animal dung, animal manure, but also slaughterhouse waste. And then we have, let's say, other types of organic waste, which are more commonly classified as waste, like household waste, like kitchen waste, restaurants, wastewater is an important one, sludges. There's all different types of waste that you can classify as feedstock for bioenergy. These are some random examples. Wood chips. These are the shells of cashew nut. This is bagasse, just the pressed biomass remains after the sugarcane has been pressed. These are seeds of jatropha, which I think has also been extensively grown in Mozambique. This is some animal manure. This is some market waste, vegetable waste that can also be used for energy production. What is always important when looking at feedstocks, bioenergy feedstocks, is the question whether it's a waste, whether it's a byproduct, or whether it was actually purposely grown. What is important is, if it's a waste, then it's something that needs to be disposed of. So sometimes it actually has a negative price. So you can actually ask the producer of the waste for some money, so that you take it off their hands and use it for energy production. When it's a byproduct, very often from industry, then it often has some value. So that there might be another way of using it. So it might have a price tag attached. And you should also then consider whether the alternative uses of this byproduct are not, say, equally important. For example, you can use animal manure from agriculture, from livestock. You can use it for biogas production, but it's also quite commonly used as a fertilizer. And even though you can use the leftover from biogas production as a fertilizer, then you might be diverting this stream from agriculture, and then in the end it might end up at another place. And if we look at a purposely grown a biomass, then it's again different, because then you need to have your land for producing it. You have quite a price tag on biomass that needs to be grown and harvested. So we end up in quite a different economic picture. Third point is distance and logistics. Because of the bulkiness of biomass, transporting it over longer distances and storing it can be quite complicated. If the energy production is done somewhere else than where the biomass feedstock comes from. Very quickly, I think biomass combustion is probably the most widely used. You see here some examples, just as cooking fuel, space heating in small furnaces, industrial heat production in somewhat bigger furnaces, and let's say somewhat larger plants for electricity production. Quite often also in industry, using the byproducts from production. Very quickly zooming in on electricity production, this usually takes place with a steam cycle. Basically, you have a boiler producing steam, high pressure steam, which is then fed to a steam turbine. And the turbine drives a generator producing electricity, and the steam is then brought back to water, which is then pumped back into the boiler. In the session on Thursday, we'll be looking closer at this type of system. The common capacity range for that is roughly 500 kilowatts to more than 200 megawatts. You have smaller and even some bigger units, but this is the most common scale range. And I think actually that's let's say 500 kilowatts to 10 megawatts. 20 megawatts is more common even. The very large systems you find mainly in Northern Europe. Very large units for district heating. The efficiency of electricity production from biomass is very much scale dependent. So you can, for smaller units, you can have efficiencies of just 15%. For larger units, it can go up to 35%, sometimes even towards 40%. And this can be greatly improved if some of the residual heat can be used in a productive manner. So let's say particularly this heat here, if that heat can be used for industrial heat, for example, then the overall efficiency of these systems can really go up very highly. It can go to 80 or 90%. Some examples from Tanzania. There's a small turbine plant which is actually not so far from Mozambique, I think. It's at the Tanzania Wattle company, which produces barks for extracting some type of biochemical. They run a 2.5 megawatt steam turbine. Another example is from Uganda, which is a sugar plant where they use the bagasse for production of electricity and heat, which is quite similar to the sugar factories in Mozambique. As I said, we'll be looking at a case study of this later on this week. Very quickly, some advantages and disadvantages of combustion. It's robust, it's reliable, and it's mature technology. It's been used for, well, let's say even modern systems have been used for more than 100 years. It's quite versatile, so you can use many different types of biomass and mixtures of different types of biomass in furnaces. And if you're able to utilize the heat, then the overall efficiency can be quite high. Disadvantages: relatively high investment costs, depending, of course, on where you manage to source the equipment. And if you go to smaller systems, let's say below 1 megawatt or below a few megawatts even, then the efficiency can be limited. Again, depending on whether the residual heat can be utilized or not. A second option is for solid biomass is gasification, which is also what we call a thermochemical process. And you let the solid biomass react with a small quantity of air. And instead of burning, it's actually converted to a combustible gas, which we call a producer gas. And this producer gas can be used for heat production in boilers or stoves. It can also be used in engines, gas engines, diesel engines for electricity production. And in some cases, it can be used for the production of synthetic biofuels, liquid biofuels, or gaseous biofuels. Those are relatively complicated and large-scale processes. Some examples here. You have very small gasifier systems, let's say for stoves, where the principle of gasification is used for let's say for clean and efficient combustion of biomass. You have gasifiers producing heat in industry. This is an example from Burkina Faso for cashew nut shell, if I'm not mistaken. This is a small unit for the production of electricity for gas for use in a diesel engine for reducing the diesel consumption, but 20 or 25 kilowatts. And this is a unit in Asia, in Cambodia, 200 kilowatts, where rice husk is converted to gas and then used in a gas engine for electricity production. This is a very simple setup of a gasifier unit. Mainly consists of a gasifier reactor, gas treatment, removal of tars and dust. This is a small flare in case the engine is not running, then the gas can be burnt. And this is an engine with an alternator for the production of electricity. This would be a typical setup for a small unit, maybe between 20 and 200 or 500 kilowatts. You also have much larger units, and they really go up to well, it's about 100 megawatts. And even for gasification units that use coal, fossil coal, it can be even bigger. Efficiency can be, for small system could be around 15%. That means that the gasifier itself may have an efficiency of, let's say, 50 or 60%, and some of the energy is then converted to heat. And the generator, the engine itself, has a limited efficiency, so that the overall efficiency can be roughly 15%, which is, for bioenergy, if you compare it to combustion, for example, it's relatively good, because we would be talking about smaller scale units that in case of combustion would really have, you know, single-digit efficiency. I mean, it could be as low as 5% or even 3% for combustion systems, whereas for gasification it could be 15%. So let's say for larger systems, this disadvantage is less pronounced. And what is important is to note is that gasifiers are quite sensitive to fuel specifications. So we really have to have the right composition and the right size, the right moisture, the right ash content. And if you use the wrong type of biomass in the gasifier, then it can really give a lot of technical problems. Advantage of gasification. It is suitable for many types of solid biomass, although, like I said, it does need to be right for the type of gasifier that you're running. Very large scale range, from quite small units up to the multi-megawatt capacities. The efficiency is relatively high, especially for smaller units, and the investment costs compared to, say, combustion plants, steam plants, are relatively low, although comparison to other types of renewable energy or even fossil energy would be different. Disadvantages is that operation and maintenance are usually not very straightforward. If you want to run a gasifier, you really need to have some good technical staff that really knows the process and who can really dive into a system in case of trouble. Because otherwise you'll be depending on the supplier, and the number of suppliers of gasifiers around the world is not that big. So, for example, in Africa, you'd be dependent on suppliers from India. India is for gasification is an important country with quite some suppliers, or otherwise Europe or United States. Technical skills, and then the waste. It's important to consider that especially gas treatment, gas cleaning, can create some wastes that need to be considered, especially when let's say waste, when gas treatment requires waste, requires water. Then you might get some contaminated wastewater. It needs to be cleaned before it can be deposited. A third thermochemical conversion process is called pyrolysis, and that is conversion of biomass to an intermediate product, and that can either be charcoal, or that can be, let's say, liquids. And then in the form of liquid, we talk about flash pyrolysis. It goes very fast heating of biomass in the absence of oxygen. Then it's broken down, and most of the components are formed, can be condensed back to a type of liquid. This liquid can then either be processed further or used as a boiler fuel, for example. But also the production of charcoal is actually a pyrolysis process, but we call it slow pyrolysis. And there the amount of gases and vapors is minimized, so that especially the solids are the most important output. Some examples here, let's say traditional charcoal making, some improved types of charcoal furnaces, and industrial charcoal furnaces. differences are, of course, the yields and the efficiency. For traditional, this can be 10% or less. For industrial, it's usually more than 30%. Improved, it's usually somewhere in between. So that means that the use of the biomass per unit of charcoal produced is less. It's more efficient as you go towards the more industrialized process. The flash pyrolysis is an industrial process which has been under development for the last 20 or 30 years, and only quite recently it's considered a commercial process. I'd say there's a few handfuls of units operating around the world. There's a few being constructed now in Scandinavia. The process is also quite versatile where it comes to the type of biomass that can be used, and it's becoming more and more possible to upgrade the pyrolysis oil to use it as an engine fuel. Quite a different process, bioenergy production process, is anaerobic digestion, and that was the production of biogas. That's we discussed briefly with one or two of our colleagues in the audience. That's a bacterial conversion of organic matter, and that takes place at low temperatures, and that's usually between 25 and 40 degrees centigrade, although there are other temperature regimes as well. What's important, very important in this process, is that it takes place in the absence of oxygen. It takes water, let's say a wet environment, not only for the bacteria to survive, but also in the conversion process of organic matter to biogas. And the biogas itself is a very good gaseous fuel, containing usually more than 50% of methane, but it can be substantially higher as well, 60-70% or more. That makes it a good fuel for household energy, let's say for cooking or lighting. It can be used in generator sets or boilers for production of electricity and heat. It's also possible to increase the methane percentage to, let's say, more than 90%, and then either compress it, making compressed biomethane, or even cool it down so that you get a liquefied biogas, biomethane. Let's say the typical layout of a biogas plant is like this. You usually have a type of pre-processing. It can be mixing, or it can be preheating, for example. Then you have anaerobic reactors. So most modern biogas plants are tank reactors, heated of, let's say, usually a few thousand cubic meters volume. Then you get a gas treatment and gas usage for in engines or in boilers. And then the effluent coming from the reactors can be separated in solid and liquid fraction, and they can be used as fertilizer in agriculture, because basically all the nutrients in the original substrate, all the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium are basically still available in the effluents. looking at the scale range of biogas, it's typically in the 50 kilowatts to roughly 10 megawatts range. Well, here again, you have some smaller, you have some bigger units. Especially in landfill gas, if you have very large landfills, you can have quite large systems. Say if the methane that is produced by the decomposition of organic materials in landfills, if that is collected, then it can be used in generators or turbines as well. What's furthermore important, these are tank reactors, but you have all different types of reactors for different types of feedstocks. You can have quite simple lagoons for industrial wastewaters, from where the biogas goes to the top, and it can be collected under a sheet of HDPE, polyethylene, or rubber kind of materials. You can have stirred reactors, you can have plug flow reactors, you can have what they call sludge blankets reactors for wastewaters, and there's other types as well. Some examples quickly. This is a typical household system, which is used to convert usually animal waste to gas for cooking and lighting. There's a slightly bigger system which produces gas for use for productive uses in a multifunctional platform, which is used for milling grain or rice milling, or extraction of palm oil, for example. This is a stirred unit at a fruit processing company, which is converting fruit wastes to biogas, and gas then used in a generator for electricity production. And this is what they call a covered lagoon. This is at a large scale, a pig farm in Cambodia. And use it for electricity production for 800 kVA gas engines. Some advantages and disadvantages. Biogas is a mature technology. It's been around for decades. You have plenty of suppliers. You have a very large scale range from the very small household systems to the very large, or let's say the large scale units with generator sets. A wide range of applications and types of feedstocks. An important feature is the possibility of avoiding the emission of methane, especially looking at industrial wastewater. If it's not properly managed, then there's a lot of fugitive methane which is produced, which is a very strong greenhouse gas. If you can collect that and use it for energy, then you not only have the energy, you also have a very substantial reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, like I said, you can use the effluents of the process for fertilizer in agriculture. Disadvantages are the relatively high investment cost, especially for modern systems. Industrial systems can be substantial, and the operation and maintenance of generators is quite expensive as well. Especially if they are used continuously, say on-grid units operating for, let's say, 8,000 hours per year. That means that maintenance needs are quite substantial. I think I'll go through the liquid biofuels a bit faster. We're talking about bioethanol and biodiesel and vegetable oils. Bioethanol which is also produced in Mozambique, I think on the basis of cassava. And I think that there are in principle quite some potential feedstocks found in the sugar industry, and the molasses, which can be converted to ethanol. The steps in the production process are fermentation, producing the ethanol itself by bacteria, and distillation, which increases the ethanol concentration. And then if you really want to get it to nearly 100% purity, you need to rectify it as well. Large-scale plants have some substantial amounts of effluents, which can then be used for biogas production. So it's quite a nice integration at sugar factories, not only producing the sugar and using the bagasse for electricity and heat production, but then also using the byproducts for ethanol and biogas. Ethanol is a good option for blending with gasoline, so that the amount of fossil fuel used for transport purposes can be reduced, or it can be used as a cooking fuel, either in its liquid form or jellified to reduce risks of fire. Another type of liquid biofuel is pure plant oil, or straight vegetable oil, as they also call it. It's extracted from oil crops, most commonly palm oil, coconut oil, but also soybean and jatropha oils. It can be used as a fuel in diesel engines, though some small modifications are required, particularly to heat up the oil before it's injected, so that it's less, it becomes more liquid, less viscous. And it's important that the quality of the oil is well managed. So it needs to be filtered to take out any particular matter. The fatty acid needs to be removed, otherwise it can attack the metal parts in engines. And so-called gums must be removed, otherwise they form sticky compounds inside the engines. Now, instead of changing the engine to match the oil, it's also possible to change the oil to match the engine. That's basically what's done when vegetable oil is converted to biodiesel. It's a chemical process where you have a reaction between vegetable oil and usually methanol. It can also be done by ethanol. And what happens is you get so-called transesterification, and you then get methyl esters, which are, basically they have very similar properties to fossil diesel. So you can blend them. You can use them in pretty much any type of blend that you want. So therefore, it can be used in normal modern diesel engines. Byproduct is glycerin, which can then be used in industry or even for biogas production. So those are the different bioenergy conversion technologies and applications that I want to present. Very briefly, some socioeconomic aspects of bioenergy. I think I also highlighted them in the presentation this morning. It has some very good applications. It provides some very good applications for the valorization of waste and byproducts, which are very often, just dumped, disposed, and if they can be used for energy production, then of course it has some very good advantages. Secondly, the production of bioenergy feedstocks can be promoted as an economic activity in rural areas, especially, where it can create employment. And that gives it some good economic perspectives. What is important to consider is the land usage for bioenergy production, biomass production, if you're not talking about waste and byproducts. And the potential danger of land grabbing that have been seen in the past. Let's say large developers of biofuel projects coming in, needing tens of thousands of hectares for the production of sugarcane or for cassava or let's say other fuel crops, and getting into conflicts with inhabitants of these lands. And the fourth issue is the food versus fuel issue. So the question whether potential food stuffs should be used for energy purposes, and the extent to which the use of foodstuffs for energy production, fuel production, could actually increase the prices of foodstuffs. And then the most important environmental aspect, I think, for bioenergy is the carbon neutrality. What we see here in this figure is the so-called the short carbon cycle. So basically, plants grow using the solar energy as an energy source, absorbing carbon through carbon dioxide from the air, producing biomass, which is then harvested, burnt, or converted in another way. During the conversion, the carbon is again released to the atmosphere in the form of CO2. And basically that is again reabsorbed by growing plants. So this is what they call a short carbon cycle, which is to say that it can take years for the cycle to be completed. If you compare it to fossil fuels, for example, we were talking about the long carbon cycle. So the accumulation of carbon in fuel deposits, fossil fuel deposits, takes millions of years, and then within a few years it's all exploited and used. So let's say all this CO2 that was absorbed from the atmosphere over the millions of years is then put back into the atmosphere in only a few years, a few decades, leading to the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, leading to the greenhouse effect. Apart from that, there is, like I mentioned, also the avoidance of methane emissions. There is the possibility of treating organic wastes, and additional advantages can come from reduction of the pollution of ground and surface waters by properly treating wastewater. So that's an additional advantage. But it's important to always bear in mind the sustainability of bioenergy. So it's important first to consider the use of waste and byproducts. It's always important to avoid deforestation or overexploitation of forests. Let's rainforests, let's say old forests alone. Protect them. Primary forests, protect biodiversity, and take measures when considering bioenergy projects against emissions to air and water.